Thank you for joining. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is introducing Feathr Intelligence, AI-powered marketing campaigns. I should have read this slide before I launched the presentation because I don't know that that's what I would have named it. I would have said just kind of Feathr Intelligence is making Feathr's nonprofit marketing platform more intelligent overall. It's not just the campaigns that are more intelligent themselves, although there are some AI-powered components of the marketing campaigns. So to kind of level set, obviously, I think most of the people in the audience are are people who are kind of external to the Feathr family. You're not quite yet customers. Maybe you've been a customer before. Maybe you've heard of Feathr, but not exactly sure what Feathr does. So, really simply put, Feathr is a marketing platform for nonprofits. The two kinds of nonprofits that we traditionally deal with are either sort of traditional charitable organizations or trade associations. We've worked with, this number is probably old. I've seen this number now for probably well over a year, so let's say over 1,500 nonprofits to help them with their marketing, their communications, their outreach, how they acquire donors, how they acquire members, a lot of stuff. And you can see the kind of incredible mix of charitable organizations on this slide, and then trade associations on this side. And the topic that we're going to talk about today, the launch of Feathr Intelligence and the features therein, really kind of apply uniformly to both charitable organizations and trade associations. Florida Home Builders Association, I know them. Okay, so to put it really, really simply, what does Feathr do? Feathr helps nonprofits grow. We do that in a bunch of ways. You could have really technical conversations about what are the particular features or tools that we use. But in short, all of those features, all of those tools combine to produce growth for our customers. And growth means a handful of different things. For a YMCA, growth is awareness, right? So this is going to be a selection of a number of case studies that we have, but you'll see if you go to our website, you can learn a little bit more detail about what this means. But for a YMCA, people in their community knowing about their existence, knowing about some of the programs that they have and opportunities to get some assistance with costs was really meaningful in growth for this YMCA. For Society of American Military Engineers, growth was a larger kind of primary annual event and meeting. Same used Feathr to get more attendees to their annual meeting. For Palmetto Community Care, which delivers kind of healthcare services as well as awareness in their community. They run a big annual event every year, I think actually a beer fest, to promote themselves and to raise funding. And so Palmetto Community Care was either able to run a bigger beer fest, generate more money, generate more funding for themselves. And then Christian Relief Fund, kind of straightforward, traditional. They used Feathr's performance advertising tools, primarily retargeting and email mapping, which are, if you're unfamiliar with it, forms of digital advertising campaigns that are kind of quite commonplace online and that Feathr enables you to run. Christian Relief Fund, this case study highlights how for about $4,000 in ad spend over the course of a year, they raised an additional $107,000. And the Christian Relief Fund's mission is building freshwater wells in, I'm pretty sure, sub-Saharan Africa. And so for them, growth was directly more funding, more donations that allowed them to impact their communities better. So as I said, Feathr's mission is to help nonprofits grow, to help you grow. I think the vast majority of the people in the audience are going to be on the nonprofit side. Well, not on the nonprofit side. You're either a part of a trade association or you're part of a charitable organization. So Feathr last week had a set of announcements around launching essentially a set of tools, what we've kind of referred to as an intelligence platform, all towards this mission of helping you grow. And I'm going to spend today kind of covering a few things. Principally, kind of explaining what Feathr Intelligence is. Hello, Joseph Ferraro's intelligence. Maybe you can communicate directly with Feathr Intelligence. What Feathr Intelligence is, show you a demo of what some of the core features are and the functionalities in the application, And then we're going to talk a little bit actually about, what's next in the pipeline for Feathr and Feathr's product. Really briefly, I think, for almost all of you, I'm going to sound redundant here because you all live this day to day. But to set the stage for why we're talking about Feathr Intelligence right now, how this kind of fits into our mission, I think it's just helpful to convey that Feathr, because we deal with nonprofits, charitable organizations, trade associations, obviously on a daily basis, and we deal with our hundreds and thousands of customers on a daily basis. We are quite well aware of the challenges that you face, how you're kind of spread thin for resources and time, experience, budget, etc. The challenges of trying to kind of maintain community engagement and communication and advertising and marketing in an increasingly complicated technical world and an increasingly complicated communication world, all while dealing with either economic challenges or funding challenges or grants disappearing, a bunch of stuff that you all are dealing with, right? And so the Feathr exists to help you grow. The tooling and the technology that we build, we want to contribute to that growth. I mean, we are keenly aware of how sometimes that tooling actually can get in the way of growth. It can be too complicated, it can be too challenging, it could be overly burdensome for actually getting any value out of. So that's why we have built and launched and are now talking about this platform called Feathr Intelligence. Feathr Intelligence is a sort of Feathr-wide set of tools and features. We're going to talk about what it means. You'll see here in this nice little picture, a few of them kind of highlighted or represented. Uh, but before we do that, I got to introduce a character. The character is called Pixel. Um, Inside of Feathr, if you have ever used Feathr or sort of seen inside of Feathr, we have a component of the platform that you implement on your website that we call the super pixel. And you might be familiar with kind of marketing tracking pixels. Well, as we were building out these tools, we felt it would be helpful to have a representation of the kind of value in the work that's being done. And it felt quite appropriate for us to name her Pixel. So a lot of the stuff that you're going to deal with is actually going to be that we're going to see us dealing with in the next 30 or 40 minutes is going to be Pixel doing the heavy lifting of the work here. So the basic goal of Feathr Intelligence is to make using Feathr and therefore growing your nonprofit faster, easier, and higher performance, higher efficiency. There are a bunch of tools within Feathr, and like any kind of marketing, data, analytics, communication platform, it can get quite complicated. Even Feathr, we focus on being as easy and simple to use as possible. But if I'm honest, even Feathr can be quite complicated and difficult to use in some places. And so Feathr Intelligence principal goal is to make the platform faster to use, easier to use, simpler to use, remove those barriers about time, resources, education, investment, etc., and ultimately to make your growth activity, the marketing campaigns, the advertising campaigns that are intended to acquire more donors or more members, easier for you to impact and run. And Feathr Intelligence is kind of broad platform. There's sort of two core components. And so I'm going to describe them for you really quickly, but then we'll get into the app and we'll actually see some examples of what they do. So two core components, one is called Audience IQ and one is called Campaign IQ. Audience IQ is a set of stuff that makes your audience in Feathr more intelligent. There's a bunch of features here. I'm not going to belabor every single one of these points, but the whole point of Audience IQ is to make the data that you have in Feathr that you're bringing over from your CRM, from your fundraising platform, from your member management platform, whatever you might use as your system of record, to make that data richer, to make it more useful to you, to make it easier to deal with, and to make it more valuable to deal with and contribute better to your growth. And so I'll give you, as we go through the demo in a few minutes, kind of more direct examples of what these are. And then Campaign IQ is the other kind of set of features and tools that are designed around making your campaigns more intelligent. So once you have your audience and Feathr and Feathr Intelligence have kind of made your audience more intelligent, more valuable, Campaign IQ is now a set of features that makes the campaigns that you run smarter, better, more performant, easier to run, simpler for you to execute, simpler for you to kind of keep up with and maintain. And so those are the two kind of big categories. Two that we're really gonna dig deep on and spend some time with is what we're calling Pixel Group Builder, which is an AI-based, basically segmentation engine. If you have dealt with segmentation in Feathr or in a tool like Feathr before, you will be well aware that it can be quite complicated, right? It can be intricate to use, and you'll see an example of, again, how even in Feathr, despite us doing our best, that it can be a little bit difficult to do kind of powerful segmentation. Well, no more, because Pixel is here to help you no longer have to deal with complex filters and rules, and in some really impressive ways brings to life all of the data that you have, kind of brings to bear all of the data that you have, and some that you might not even be aware that you have in order to drive growth. And then the other feature that we're going to dig a little bit deep on is a new campaign type. There's a specific campaign that you can launch in Feathr. It's called Pixel Plus. And the main thing about this campaign is that it brings together what used to be or would take three, four, five, six different campaigns. You now get all in one. And so it unifies all these kinds of targeting and identifiers and device discovery to make it substantially easier and more performant. You launch one campaign, you'll get visibility everywhere. We'll talk about and kind of showcase what that means. And there are kind of specific other campaign IQ features and audience IQ features that will kind of pop up along the way. So let me apologies, I don't work in Zoom a lot, so I now got to share this, and I gotta apologize. You're gonna see all my tabs. This is one of the things that I dislike the most about Zoom. I'm just now complaining to you guys, is that you don't get to like share a tab in Zoom. What you get is you can just see the whole window. And I hate when you all have to look at tabs. I find tabs horrendous and disgusting. And I live with the shame of having dozens and dozens of tabs open. But then I feel really bad when other people have to experience that as well. Okay. I was just doing something. I was clicking around. You saw me clicking around. I'm running a kind of special version of our application that has a bunch of stuff anonymized. There's stuff that would typically be on this screen that if you're a Feathr customer that you would be familiar with sort of appearing, but I have hidden them to guard the identities and data of individuals that may pop up in this process of kind of building communities and groups and audiences. But if you're sort of not familiar with Feathr, what I want to reassure you is this is not how it normally looks. Typically, you see names here, you see email addresses here, you see other identifiers, but I've kind of blanked them out so that we don't accidentally run into them along the way as we're doing this. And so I'm going to run through right now, not necessarily in the order we just talked about these features, but I'm going to run through them in kind of a natural workflow, how you would encounter these features if you were a Feathr customer and you were kind of going through start to finish building an audience. Now, since I think the vast majority of people in the audience for this webinar aren't Feathr customers before, I've kind of set the stage to say that there are a bunch of ways to get data about people into Feathr. If you're kind of questioning, like, where do these people come from? They come from kind of one of three places. I mean, there are more, but one of three places that I think you should visualize to try and understand what's happening here. One of them is you export a list, a spreadsheet from whatever email platform you use or CRM platform you use when you first sign up with Feathr, and you import those people into Feathr, kind of basic, like a table of contact records. And so you'll get those people. Another kind of really core way to get people into Feathr is through the super pixel, what I mentioned. I guess I can show you all this. It's this little bit of code, goes on your website, tracks activity and links people click and a bunch of stuff. and kind of gives you some of the data that we're going to deal with, right? So if you become a Feathr customer, this goes on your web page. It's really similar to Google Analytics or any other kind of tool that you've used, collects data about people. And then third primary pathway for data is an integration with your sort of CRM-like tool, whether you use Blackbaud, Razor's Edge on the nonprofit side, IMIS, from ASI on the association side, or anybody in the space for either of these is probably really well familiar about how many dozens of these CRMs are. But so there's this stuff happening that's filling in data for these accounts, and now we're at the step of saying like, hey, I'd like to build a group of people. I'd like to build a segment of people that I want to target in a campaign. And prior to a week ago or like 9 days ago, the way that you would do this is through this kind of complicated visual puzzle of rules and variables. And so this is what we sort of refer to as our group builder. Or filter builder, and you can see all of these kinds of variables around name and address and websites visited and times. And you can build all these rules and you can make kind of complicated combinations of this and this minus this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the simple, straightforward interface that we've built over years to kind of make this process, this like Boolean database search process, relatively simple for our customers. But as I said, even I have to admit, even we have to admit, this is relatively complicated. So that's why we have built this kind of AI natural language based interface for this process. So now instead of building all those rules and kind of having to know like what URLs are on my website and what I'm doing, I instead talk to Pixel and I tell Pixel what I would like to target, what sort of group or segment of people that I would like, and some magic happens, either magic or science, depending on your perspective about how these things work. So I'm going to go through a few examples, and I'm going to kind of accelerate the magic because I don't come from the school of Quentin Tarantino. I think I come from the school of like Steven Spielberg. Is like I want to build tension throughout the experience, and so we're going to start relatively simple and crank it up. So I'm going to start with one of these kind of pre-built suggestion ones. I know that the anonymized account in the background here is a 501(c)(3) charitable organization. And so I'm going to make this request to Pixel, which is people who have visited my donation or volunteer pages in the last 90 days, right? Kind of relatively straightforward request. I'm going to ask it to generate this group. And while Pixel is doing this, I'm going to talk over this and I'm going to sort of explain a couple of things that are happening here. One is this pretty generic language, donation or volunteering, right? I think anybody in the 501(c)(3) space knows like we don't always, of course, I wonder why that has not happened. Let's try again. Um, uh, the not do we always refer to gifts or donations as donations? Sometimes they're gifts, sometimes it's charitable giving, sometimes it's uh, pledges and funding, etc. And then again, volunteering doesn't always necessarily sound like volunteering, but in this request, right? Like I wasn't very specific. And what you'll see when the response comes back to me is that what's happening in the background is Pixel, our wonderful little adorable friend, looked into the account's data, and Pixel has access to basically the entire account's data, and says, I'm going to try and figure out this request. And what you'll see here is I analyzed your account data to identify relevant donation and volunteer related pages. So I found several URLs that match this criteria. So on the donation pages, on the donation request, right, there's main donation page. But as you can see here, World Contraception Day pledge page, Reproductive Futures Fund page, More Ways to Give page, Giving Tuesday page, et cetera, et cetera. And then on the volunteering side, right, there's work with us pages, careers pages, internship pages, et cetera. And when I make this group, what you'll see is it fills in for me what would have otherwise been for me a kind of quite complicated group to build and a complicated process and set of features. Um, and what you'll see is that what it has built for me here, and it's within the last 90 days, is 2,000 people. Again, so I could scroll down here and you can see that everything is kind of blanked out. But from this account's total audience of 360,000 people, we've now narrowed it down to 1,900 people, which is people within the last 3 months who have visited my donation or volunteering pages. And this is a relatively straightforward request, but this actually probably represents the bulk of the kind of groups and segments that our customers are now building because this is sort of already at the limit of the kind of complexity people can wrap their heads around. So now I want to crank up the complexity a little bit more. And so here I'm going to type people who have visited our technical publication pages, or what did I say here? Or are interested in working with us. So I'm doing this from the perspective of I'm a marketer or a communications person in this organization. I know what sort of technical publications means. It means something within my organization, but I don't want to do the effort of kind of scouring our website for like what are all the places that we have done this kind of technical publication stuff. Um, and so while this one's going, I'm going to go back and highlight a couple of things here. Again, for people who are uninitiated, because most of you are not already Feathr customers. Uh, these ones, which are just a silhouette of a person, these are anonymous individuals, so people who the account does not have email address, name, address for. But these ones that you see have little acronym. These are identified individuals. We'll very likely have an email address that's hidden from us, but we have their name, very likely have their email address. And so these groups you can use throughout the platform for marketing, for advertising. By the way, Sheila, I see your question, and we'll either find an opportunity to answer it in the stream of things or at the end in Q&A. So again, Pixel kind of did this thing, and this is a relatively straightforward, again, set of examples. And I love this one because I know what's happening in the background, is that Pixel looked at the data in this person's account, and what they found is that there's a bunch of pages that kind of follow a similar pattern. So it's going to make a group that includes not only all of these complicated URLs and whatnot, but also it's going to match the pattern of their technical publication resources. So you see here, URL visited starts with technical publication resources because there's a bunch of URLs about that sort of follow this. If I could find one in here that's an example. No, I guess not. So I gotta be happy that I had Pixel and it did this for me. Maybe if I do this. Yeah, so you see here, there's like pack curriculum, ready counseling, etc. There's a bunch of these that, I would have had as an individual had to fill in first. Uh, but I don't have to do that anymore. Okay, I'm going to now go on to an even, I think, kind of more interesting example here. And again, I know the account that is actually secretly in the background here. Within 100 miles of Grand Rapids. So I want to explain this a little bit. Again, I'm doing this from the perspective of one of the marketers in this account. I know that this is a nonprofit that is about kind of addiction, substance abuse, recovery, etc. I also happen to know that they're based in Michigan. So I'm going to structure this request, which is like people who have visited pages about seeking help and are within 100 miles of Grand Rapids. And there's a couple of things that are happening here. One of them is again that seeking help is sort of really generic. You'll see when the result comes back. The other one is I'll wait for the reveal. I'll wait for the reveal because it's so fascinating when Pixel does her little explanation of what's happening here. And then I'll also, because these all kind of take like 30 seconds to a minute, I'm going to start our sort of crescendo one, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about that one. This one is going to be really wild. People who are most likely to donate over the next 3 to 4 months, right? This is a really broad question. And the process that Pixel follows to answer this and the kinds of groups that she builds from those stimulation are fascinating. So we're going to come back here. People who have visited pages about seeking help are within 100 miles of Grand Rapids. So we've seen this kind of dynamic before. Look at the pages, look at the URL activity, identify, various page URLs that are about seeking help. Uh, but it's this within 100 miles of Grand Rapids part that I particularly love. To define the geographic area, I created boundaries that approximate a 100-mile radius around Grand Rapids, Michigan, using latitude and longitude. So in Feathr, if you use that superpixel, you have that superpixel on your website and people are visiting your website kind of since the beginning of Feathr has existed for the better part of a decade. One of the pieces of data that has come along with that is the latitude and longitude locations of this activity. However, to this day, latitude and longitude has not played a significant role in the usage of the data for customers because who understands latitude and longitude, right? Like who knows how to build a 100-mile radius around Grand Rapids, Michigan using these numbers, right? Northwest, et cetera, application of wherever Grand Rapids, Michigan is. So I'm going to make this group. And again, it's going to make an interesting kind of group, which is there's all these URLs around addiction recovery and sober living and resources. And then there's this additional one, which is also this kind of box in latitude and longitude around Grand Rapids, Michigan. And what this produces is 1,700 people out of 203,000. And if you are this organization, whoever this organization is, this is an incredibly useful kind of segment to have because as you can see here, there's some anonymous people, there's some named people, which means they likely have email addresses for these people. They likely have physical addresses for these people. And so they could use a group like this to really hone in on what their kind of service delivery is, right? I could show them ads across the internet, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Google, across all these places from within Feathr. I could also send them an email knowing that these are people who have visited these pages and I know are within the geographic area that I deliver my services to. I really love that one because it makes data that was otherwise so complicated and so difficult to use so straightforward. Okay, our last group builder example was this request that I made, which is people who are most likely to donate over the next 3 to 4 months. And I want to take a kind of beat here to explain what's happening because that request is all of the context that Pixel gets, right? You just type in people who are most likely to donate. She doesn't really know what that means. What this ends up producing is Pixel goes and says internally, I've watched the reasoning process. I don't really know what that means. Let me go look at all of these pieces of data that this account has in order to try and define some criteria for what that means. And what ends up happening is she looks at everything that's in the account. Tags that people have on records, emails that they've sent, campaigns that they've launched, donations that they've tracked, data that's within their uh, within their database, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you'll see that she compiles a bunch of different kind of qualification criteria. So donation page visitors, people who have completed donations based on data within this with like kind of tracked website activity, past year donors. So this account has their CRM data from Razor's Edge integrated. And so they can see last gift dates, last gift amounts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she explains here, these are various signals of donation intent. And so these represent your most promising options for people who are potentially donors. And so you can see here that unlike these other ones that we've sort of looked at, this is now a really complicated like group that she's built. It's highly specific and has references, complicated pieces of data, all of that stemming from a very sort of generic request, which is, hey, please find for me people who are most likely to donate in the next 3 to 4 months. If you're in the audience and you represent a trade association, a completely analogous example would be people who are most likely to become members, or members, who have been disengaged recently, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many examples that I could go through that I think would be relevant or interesting to a lot in the audience, but I'm not going to because it takes time. But basically, anything you can think of, right? If you want to start playing with, like, hey, I want to find people who have interacted with all of our fundraising ask campaigns, but haven't opened an email in the last 90 days from us, or people who are tagged as newsletter subscribers, but haven't opened an email within the last 90 days from us, so on and so forth. Whatever data that you have inside Feathr is available for Pixel and Feathr Intelligence to look at to build these groups. Okay, that's the kind of group building component. So if you're following the story, we've signed up, we've become Feathr customers, we've onboarded our data through the SuperPixel, through our CRM integration, maybe we just imported a list, and now we want to start our kind of marketing and advertising. We want to start sending emails, we want to start running ad campaigns, and so we've built these various groups. So now we're going to look at Pixel Plus, this kind of new campaign type, which is a primary entry point into starting to turn this data and this process of segmentation into value, into ROI, into increased fundraising or more members. And I'm specifically, again, going to talk about Pixel Plus. There are a lot of campaign types inside of Feathr. I'm not going to go through all of these, but what I am going to sort of talk about and convey is that Pixel Plus, what it intelligently does is combine a lot of these campaign types into a single campaign. So whereas you previously would have had to make multiple of these campaign types, in particular, I want you to kind of make a mental note about this meta retargeting and meta email mapping thing. You just get to make one now. So I've already kind of preloaded this one, and I'm going to click it to not clutter this account with too much data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a group. So this is not a full training session in Feathr. So if you're kind of confused about what I'm looking at, we're in Feathr. We're making a campaign right now. We're making a Pixel Plus campaign, and we're picking the group of people that we are targeting. And there's, to Feathr customers, this kind of new interface on the right in this Pixel Plus world. So I want to explain what this is showing me and what this is doing. What Pixel Plus does is combine basically every possible kind of way to target people that Feathr is able to exercise for you. What that means is it combines kind of traditional, so like cookies that you're tracking for people, with a bunch of new kinds of technology for how to reach people. So, for example, in this audience, which is around 6,000 people, Feathr has already tracked about 8,000 unique identifiers, basically cookies, that you could use to go target people. If you're asking like, how's there 6,000 people and 8,000 cookies? People can have multiple cookies. So for every person in this group, there's about 1.25 cookies or identifiers available for them. So this is sort of the old school component. The new school Pixel Plus component is this. There's about 6,000 emails that we're describing here as being activated. What is email activation? Email activation is the future of targeting people on the internet. So now this is no longer using cookies. This uses technology called UID2, which sort of gets around, if you've heard about Chrome and Google and Apple, third-party cookies, whatever. This is the replacement for that kind of targeting. What this uses is a hashed version of people's email address to target them across various publishers. And so there's 6,000 additional emails that we're going to participate in kind of spreading out and trying to target those people with. And then there's this device discovery component, which kind of plays nicely with this email activation piece. What device discovery is, if you picture for one individual, this kind of like spider web view where like, let's say their desktop is their primary device. For me, the computer I'm staring at right now, my primary device. But I also obviously have a cell phone, I have a tablet, I have a laptop, I have a television in my living room. What device discovery does is say, hey, if this person that you're trying to target, whomever, these people that you're trying to target within this group, have been seen elsewhere on the internet, on other devices, their cell phone, their laptop, their tablet, whatever. Even if your particular account, your particular organization has never seen that specific device or identifier, you will be able to target them on that device through Feathr. So to make that plain and simple, if you just have someone's email address, they haven't come to your website in the last 6 months. They don't have a valid cookie. You normally wouldn't be able to target them. On Feathr, you can target them. And you can not only target them on their computer, you can target them on every device that is available. And I mentioned television. Televisions are included. So you can upload your CRM contact data. I see there are a couple questions about this, so I'm going to answer in a second. And on day one, even if you haven't had people come to your website, you haven't captured their cookies yet, you can target them with ads, with obviously emails. You can send them emails. You can also, if you have commercial quality creative available, you can show them commercials while they're watching Sunday Night Football on their Peacock app or Paramount Plus or whoever has Sunday Night Football now. I can't remember, or ESPN or a lot of these, whatever, any of these kind of over the top OTT connected TV platforms, you can target people just if you have one of these identifiers, their email address or a cookie. Feathr kind of fills in that web for you. So this is one of the core features of Audience IQ, this kind of combination of email activation and device discovery. Next, this is one of my favorite because it kind of blows my mind. So I've picked this group. I didn't mention what this group was. If I recall correctly, it was for an association, people who had been to their annual meeting and had opened an email within some number of days. It was something like that, kind of high intent, high engagement people in this audience. But that was 6,000 people. And maybe I want to be more precise with this particular message that I am sending, right? It has something to do with my industry or has something to do with my charitable organization. So what Feathr allows you to do, Feathr Intelligence allows you to do, is to apply intelligence to this group, this targeting of people, for data that you don't have about them. So first we're going to start with location. Location is location. I can pick countries and cities and whatever, right? Relatively straightforward. So I can filter down to only targeting people in a specific location in this campaign. The other thing that I can do is I can filter down to specific age ranges for these people. Even if I don't know what age they are, but I might have outreach that I only want to go to people who are 18 to 34 years old. Well, in Feathr, you can restrict that messaging to people who are only 18 to 34 years old. Conversely, you might want to target people who are retired or pre-retirement, depending on what your organization specializes in. You can also filter based on demographic information. For example, household income or education, or stuff that they're interested in, whether they've expressed interest in climate action or animal welfare or live theater performances. If you're on the charitable organization side, people who have prior giving history to charitable causes, people who have volunteered before, people who attend charity events, so on and so forth. We launched with it, like, I think sort of 15 or 16 of these last week. We're going to continue to build these out as we get requests for kind of categories that people want. And I want to kind of sort of really clarify here, this is not data that this account has tracked about people. They don't have household income. They don't have prior giving history, whether they've attended charity events, but they get to enrich and make their data more intelligent, make their audience more intelligent in Feathr. This is going to yell at me about this website, so I'm going to do this to show kind of the last couple of pieces of Feathr Intelligence before I leave as much time for questions as possible. So step here, campaign optimization. This is a part of Campaign IQ, is that if you, in a normal kind of digital marketing campaign world, you have to, I'm going to click this because it's going to annoy me. You have to set and configure all of these kind of like variables about bidding price and inventory placement and above the fold, below the fold, time of day, et cetera, in order to kind of optimize and vary the performance of your campaign. Well, with Feathr, and particularly with Feathr Intelligence, you don't have to do that anymore. You just kind of leave this on. You pick the particular objective that you want. So there's awareness, which is sort of maximum number of people seeing something, engagement, which is people directly engaging with this campaign. So in the case of an advertising campaign, it's people clicking the ads typically, or conversions, which is if I have set a conversion goal for this particular thing, then I can kind of maximize the performance of that campaign to drive as many conversions as possible. And if I leave this on, Feathr Intelligence will kind of play with all of those variables and settings in the background constantly to maximize the performance of your campaign. And I'll sort of show an example of what that looks like in a second. Last couple of bullet points, sort of rounding this out. Pixel Plus campaign in the wild for a real customer. If you remember that what we saw as the sort of estimate for this kind of device discovery effect was 5% expansion. We're being conservative in the early days of the way that we're kind of calculating these estimates of audience growth. This is a good example of, I think, what sort of real world experience looks like. That for this customer, in the first 8 days of their account, roughly their audience has been 30% more reachable. They've had 30% more people be able to be reached because of Feathr Intelligence, because of this sort of device discovery thing. So that means cell phones, laptops, tablets, whatever these other devices that people have in their arsenal that they might not have directly interacted with you using, that Feathr now allows you to target them. And 30% is quite meaningful. That sort of opens up a lot more growth opportunity from the audiences that you all are generating. Last final thing about this campaign performance, campaign IQ thing, another thing that is really difficult to manage for customers is knowing like when do I double down on a campaign? How do I know if a campaign is performing well? How do I know if it's performing poorly relative to benchmark, so on and so forth? So one of the things Feathr Intelligence does is it looks at your campaigns and it will alert you to give you these kinds of recommendations. So if it finds a campaign which is performing very well, this is a good example of one that this is the case. It's saying that this is generating conversions 4 times the cost to earn it, right? So your like return on your ad spend is 4x. It's a pretty good number. That's kind of in the higher tiers of what we see. So it alerts you, it sends you an email, gives you a notification in the application to say, hey, you have a really highly performing campaign. You should make this campaign longer. You should add more budget to it because this one is driving a lot of value to it. And then on the other side of the coin, there are also opportunities where you have a campaign that's not performing that well, right? It's not showing good ROI. And so Feathr Intelligence, again, will look at it and say, hey, this campaign needs more creative or needs to change the target audience, add more people to it, something like that. So there are kind of analogous versions of these alerts for improving performance of campaigns as well. Okay, that kind of 20 maybe 30-minute summary is all I want to do for now on actual kind of demonstration of Feathr Intelligence. Honestly, I could probably spend another 30 minutes to an hour showing small features here or there, or kind of going through the group builder and showing various examples of it. But I think this kind of is a nice overview of a kind of full start to finish experience of how Feathr now with Feathr Intelligence makes the growth of your nonprofit, the tracking of data, et cetera, easier, faster, simpler by really, really condensing some of these workflows that used to be really long and really complicated into some of them kind of don't exist anymore, right? Like that kind of campaign optimization step, you don't even have to bother with it. Just click the button, let Feathr do it, and you can be confident that your campaigns will perform as well as they should. All right, let me go back to the deck. And I see these two questions. I also, I don't know if I am or am not allowed to see if there's any Q&A stuff filled out, but I will lean on somebody else to tell me that if there's some Q&A stuff to answer at the end. Okay, so I see the two questions. They kind of relate to um, stuff that I'm going to talk about here. So I'm going to get through the next couple of slides, and I'll answer Robert and Ian's questions. So what I'm going to show you in the next two slides is basically as Feathr has been building these things, what is the impact that it has had for our customers? And so there's two kind of main things that I want to show. This chart, one of the most remarkable charts that I think we in the company have seen over, I mean, potentially ever. This is 2025. 2025 average campaign media cost. If you're familiar with this acronym, CPM stands for cost per me, however you want to say it, cost per thousand impressions of advertising. We have lowered that cost for our customers by 51% over the course of this year. This is weeks in the year of 2025. By implementing all of these kinds of various features of auto optimization and budget recommendations and all this stuff and better audiences. And this is a huge impact on performance. It's basically like doubling your marketing budget. Um, uh, because, right, like you get twice as many impressions for the same amount of budget. The other thing that I want to showcase, the absolute numbers here, I think matter a little bit less to all of you. But this is basically first half of the year performance, basically per customer. So the thing that matters is the ratio between the first and the last number, not necessarily the total numbers. And this is over the course of the last 2 years, we've gotten so much better at more efficiently driving performance for our customers that fixed for the same number of customers the amount of conversions and the amount of value generated from those conversions have increased like 80 and 50% respectively. Uh, and again, it's a testament to all of the kind of intelligence features working to make your campaigns more performant, your audiences more precise, more active, more etc. Um, so I want to briefly talk about future enhancements. There's kind of enhancements to that demographic data that are coming, putting those demographic filters onto your actual contact records, Pixel Plus, automatic meta campaigns. So I said, like, put a little asterisk around those meta campaigns coming in the next, I think, like 6 weeks. A Pixel Plus campaign will automatically have backing meta campaigns. If you integrate your Facebook page, you kind of connect your Facebook page to Feathr, then when you launch a Pixel Plus campaign, you will automatically be running the equivalent campaign on Meta. So Facebook and Instagram automatically. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to set up and manage another campaign. All of that stuff just gets managed automatically for you. Audio and connected TV. So I mentioned this, that you can automatically target people on televisions. That's going to expand to Spotify, which is the primary audio advertising network. And the same thing, that will all be through one Pixel Plus campaign. You just pick your one audience and whatever creatives you have, kind of web creatives, you have video creatives, you have TV creatives, you have audio creatives. You just put them all in that one campaign and Feathr will optimize everything for you. I saw a question about QGive, and so I also want to highlight Feathr's other announcement and also start to now address Ian's question a little bit. So another expansion that's launching within the next, not even couple of months, 6 to 8 weeks, is Feathr is launching a fundraising platform. So Ian asked a question about QGive donation data. So Feathr is launching its own fundraising and donation tool with a little bit of a twist. And that twist is that similar to other fundraising platforms, Feathr's fundraising tool asks for an additional kind of fee or tip as a second step of the process, but we don't keep that money. So other platforms right now keep that money, right? So if somebody leaves a tip, if anybody happens to use GiveButter or what's it called now, GoFundMe Pro, you kind of have this model. If you go through your donation pages, there's an optional tip. But in that case, the platform keeps that additional money. In Feathr's case, we're going to convert those dollars into growth credits for you. And those growth credits are used to pay for media and services. So whatever you're spending right now, either within Feathr or outside of Feathr on Facebook, Meta, Instagram, et cetera, kind of paid social, uh, the growth credits will pay for that. So this will work to offset the budget requirements that you have to run effective marketing, advertising, et cetera. And as it's mentioned here, we're also planning on making services available in a marketplace inside of Feathr through a network of partners that we have that you can use your growth credits to redeem for those kinds of services. So whatever services that they offer, creative services, branding services, website optimization, et cetera, that you could use these credits towards that. But that's coming in a different webinar next week. So if you're curious about hearing more about that fundraising tool and how those growth credits work, then you should sign up for the webinar that's coming a week from today. So now I will answer questions and I'll go in order. So Robert Colby. Do people upload a CRM contact list each time, or do they eventually use Feathr as a CRM as Pixel expands their CRM list in the course of each flight? So some people do upload a CRM list consistently. Other people, like we have direct integrations with, like I said, IMIS, with Blackbaud. We're plugged into Zapier, so any CRM that's available on Zapier, for example, Bloomerang, they're not uploading a contact list. There's just an automatic integration that's happening that kind of syncs that data in both ways. But to your question about do they use Feathr as a CRM, wink, wink. Maybe in a few months there will be a webinar around Feathr announcing a CRM. Okay, Ian asks, can we integrate our traffic, QGIF donation data, and constant contact results with Feathr automatically? So on the traffic, QGIF donation data, the answer is yes. The SuperPixel goes on your website, and we work with QGIF just fine. The kind of pixel code is there are places inside of QGIF to kind of put this sort of tracking code. If you've played with Facebook pixels or Google pixels, you're probably familiar about the little box to put it in. And so that kind of tracks your QGIF donation data and any traffic. With respect to constant contact, we don't have a constant contact integration. What I would advise is you should use Feathr instead of constant contact. Because if you're buying Feathr, you get an email platform. There's a whole email marketing platform inside of Feathr. And so you'd be better off using Feathr as your primary email tool, because then all of that data is available to Pixel and to you to kind of use for analysis. So like you can then ask Pixel, hey, people who have opened my newsletter in the last 3 months or so. Is social media data used? If you are a marketer who markets on social media, meaning you kind of run those campaigns and you have in particular the UTM codes and parameters associated with those campaigns, then the answer is yes. Your social media data is included in that data. You maybe saw when I was scrolling that like UTM codes and parameters, so social media UTM codes and parameters are included in the data that you look at. Philip asks, we are using Google PMax a lot and getting good last click results. That's good to hear. Yeah, familiar with that. With Feathr sit on top of my Google paid ads or in parallel to it. So in the case of Google paid ads, we sit on top of it. It's complementary to it. We do allow for, we have a native integration with Google for Google ad grant campaigns. So if you are an ad grant customer, you can do that natively within Feathr. If you're not an ad grant customer and just kind of using Google Ads paid platform, then for now, Feathr would sit on top of it. I can tell you it is, however, on the roadmap relatively soon to add exactly the campaign type that you're talking about natively into Feathr. So you would set those up within Feathr. Right now, we have what we call tracked link campaigns, where you basically kind of define again, UTM codes and parameters that you're using in your PMax campaigns, and then Feathr just kind of absorbs all that information. But soon you won't have to do that. Google ads will be directly in Feathr. And then can we bring historical constant contact data over? Basically, yes. Yeah, you can import your contact records and whatever sort of data you have stored from constant contact. Yeah, you can map over all of the fields and whatever it is that you would have tracked about them. I think some kinds of like activity, like they opened this specific email versus they didn't open that specific email. That's probably really tough to bring over, but the kind of the basic historical contact records, what they're subscribed to, what they're not subscribed to, all of that stuff you can port over. Yeah. Okay, I have finished talking with 3 minutes left, and I don't see the button anywhere for QA. So either there is no QA thing here, or it's set up differently than the last webinar was. So I will just fill the last couple of minutes and give anybody an opportunity to ask a question if they want. Also, I believe Isa, who is the invisible woman behind the scenes, yeah, just popped up a poll, which is if based on the information you saw, you would like to kind of get a walkthrough of Feathr, see some of the features a little bit more detail, learn more about fundraising or email or any of the stuff that any of you all had questions about, then yeah, answer the poll and someone will reach out to you. And we would love to talk to you. And I'm sure would love to talk to you in a little bit more detail about uh, hi, what you have said about Constant Contact also applies to MailChimp. Yes, exactly the same in that both I would highly advise if you intend to use Feathr to stop paying for MailChimp because you'd kind of be paying for redundant features. And then yeah, the for kind of like contact record data, so email addresses, subscriptions, custom fields, all of that stuff, you can migrate over to Feathr. And then we also have services available for actually quite reasonable price, where we will translate your like email templates also. So whatever templates that you have, we will rebuild them in the application for you. Certainly, you can avoid paying that fee if you want to rebuild them yourself. But I know for a lot of people, a lot of organizations, they've put a lot of effort into building their templates in whatever tool that they're using. So we kind of offer for a fairly marginal fee, we'll migrate that over for you as well. We'll translate that over for you. Okay, I will continue vamping for the full minute. What else is there to talk about? How angry I am at Billy Napier. Are all of these services available to Canadian nonprofit clients? Yes, absolutely. There's no issue. We have, I don't know how many, but probably in the dozens of Canadian nonprofit clients. Um, a little bit of different guidance on your privacy policies, like how you would update your privacy policy to reflect Feathr. But yeah, certainly totally possible. And then I see Brother John Anavarapu asks for Indian nonprofit organizations. In principle, yes. Really, the only challenge there is going to be kind of time difference because we don't have we don't have like international coverage of support. Uh, so in some cases, right, you might be waiting a little bit for chat responses for support, but from a technological perspective, I know we have a lot of organizations that have overlap with Indian audiences. Yes, sure. If you respond to that poll about wanting a personalized walkthrough of Feathr, John, then somebody will contact you regarding this. I think we've reached the time limit. So thank you very much, everybody, for allowing me to talk at you and for verifying that you all probably exist and are not just a bunch of AI chatbots that I have been talking to for the last hour. Okay. I appreciate all of you very much. Also, I just noticed Bronwyn Alexander. That is a sweet name. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a good weekend.